trusted friends and partners to share their wisdom in our community here today. I will let these ladies introduce themselves, but the onset of this event was I had the pleasure of meeting Sharece, which is our first lawyer here to my left, in the pink pants. Are you guys behaving?
Yes, all the time.
I've always wanted to be a teacher, so don't make me bring out the ruler, you know. But Sharece and I had the pleasure of meeting just this past summer at our wine fest, and she started chatting with me, and I could have swore I knew her from a different life, and it was just this is the life that we were meant to meet in. So she's a business lawyer, and we started chatting about some of her endeavors, and I'm like, I would love to collaborate with you. Carmen has been a trusted and amazing friend of mine for years. And as we started talking, I thought this would be an amazing space for us to have a conversation because as women, as entrepreneurs, as leaders in our own right, we've struggled. We've learned a lot in our ways. And I think sometimes we don't give ourselves the space to educate others in a trusted environment, ask the questions before you phone a friend or, phone a non-friend and whatnot. And so we thought, how great would it be to actually do an event where we can share some of our expertise, make new friends, kind of continue to build friends that we have, and share what we've learned along the way, and then maybe continue to build bridges to success. And so that's the intention for today. We dabbled a lot all day today is if we should continue because Cleveland is Cleveland and this weather is for real, but we thought the people who have the grit and want to kind of figure out what they're going to kind of come through the snow and they're going to figure it out. So I appreciate you braving the streets of Cleveland, for all the streets that were plowed and not plowed. I appreciate you for being here, and we'll catch up with all the folks that weren't able to join us that register for the event. But without further ado, I thought I would. The first question is really just an introduction. I just would like, this isn't my show, this is my space, but this is really about them and their expertise. So I thought, how about we start with you, an introduction, name, what is your practice, what is your passion, why did you enter that part of law?
Okay, thanks everybody for coming out, as Elizabeth said. And okay, so my name is Sharece Miller Curry, and I do primarily business law. I also do some personal injury, like car accidents, and then misdemeanor defense. But primarily, I work with small business owners, helping them create the contracts, the agreements that they need to be able to be legally protected as much as possible, and LLC formations, so that their structure is correct when they're, initially starting out. And just really, my passion is helping small business owners. I have had a number of small businesses over the years, and I just know from personal experience, all of the just the things that you're going to experience as a business owner, from starting and doing it all on your own to having a franchise, doing build out, everything. So my passion is being able to help other business owners that, because I love seeing someone starting a business and just the excitement. And then when they are in the business, being able to just like thrive and know that they're protected because they're like, I have, these contracts in place. So I know that, I have as much protection as possible when I'm dealing with whatever incidents happen, because they're bound to happen. The contracts, I tell everybody, they are there for when things go wrong, not for the beginning and excitement and everything and things are going well. It's for when things go wrong, and then you can fall back on what did we agree on. So yeah, I've been practicing for 13 years, and I'm excited that you guys are here and excited to share more information.
Awesome, thank you. Carmen.
Hello, brave souls that came out today in this Cleveland weather. So I am Carmen Scott. I am the shareholder, or one shareholder, of Staring House and Scott. My practice really focuses on estate planning, trust work, business succession, which is why we're here today. Really trying to protect what we've built throughout the years, and really with an eye on leaning towards generational wealth. So my passion is just that, is being able to transfer what we've accumulated during our lifetime to our children, our families, so that we are building sustainable families, sustainable communities, so that we know that when we leave this earth, because we all have to leave this earth at one point or another. I don't know if you knew that, but newsflash, no one survives, right? And so when we leave this world, to make sure that our assets are protected and are passed down from generation to generation and in the right way and in the right form. So I help clients with establishing financial powers of attorney, wills, trust. Again, if there's a business in place, making sure that that business is transferring to your beneficiaries seamlessly and that it doesn't contradict asset transfers, and it doesn't contradict your general estate plan as it is as a whole, right? And we'll talk a little bit later, I think, about making sure that estate planning, your personal estate plan and your succession plan for your businesses marry each other. Because if they don't, you can run into a host of problems. So I've been practicing for 9 years in this space as a lawyer, and before that, for 15 years as a paralegal in this space as well. So for those of you who are interested in law school, this is your sign. I'm not going to point fingers, but this is your sign. I spent a lot of time honing my craft as a paralegal, and I was able to step into this practice and become a partner early on because of that. So I have offices in Avon Lake and in Oberlin, and again, we're a very niche practice. We focus strictly on estate planning, business succession, estate administration, trust administration work. So I partner with attorneys like Sharece that does the business side of it and other attorneys that do other areas of law so that we can look at it holistically. I'm excited to be here, and I hope that's not my phone ringing. No, it's not.
No, it's the TV.
I'm excited to be here and to talk to you and to answer any questions that you may have.
Sorry, the fireplace is just taking a pause. I know. Try to do everything. We're not advertising. These are not our sponsors for the event, just in case. You know, we hope to one day get to that point.
A small disclaimer.
You know,
a small disclaimer.
But they're not our sponsors. But nonetheless, but I appreciate that introduction, and I appreciate that. And just for everybody that is here, we have business cards that we put right there at that wine chest right there. So as you leave, there might be a question that you might be left with later that you want to follow back up. And I encourage you. This is a space for you to continue to grow and learn and build networks, right? In a safe, kind of comfortable space. So before we get started, because we've curated about 30 questions, I won't keep you here all night. This is probably about a 45-minute discussion. However, I just want to, by a show of hands, since it's a really good intimate group, how many people are already in business? I just want to make sure. So already in business. Okay, great. So that's awesome. Anybody looking to start a business? Start a business. Okay, so we have a couple. I just want to make sure we curate the questions. We're an intimate group. I've actually put some little question cards around the room. So if something pops up, please feel free to write down a question. I'm assigning Tony as our question taker, so you can always give them to him. He'll be right there, and he can give it there, so it can be anonymous if you want to, or feel free at any point, just raise your hand. I've got you. So I know since there are a couple, let's start at the basics just to kind of start the conversation. We'll keep it brief and kind of dig in. So let's just start. When we think about starting a business, if you can, Sharece, just kind of give us some of the basic 101s. Like, do I really need an LLC? You know, what's the difference between an LLC or an S Corp, and kind of what's the benefit to having either or? Even though you might already be in business, it might be a good, like, check the box if I did it right. So can you just give us a rundown on that?
Before I pass on the mic, I want to just make sure that we're giving the disclaimer that this session is for information purposes, educational purposes only. Please do not take this as any means as legal advice. If you have specific questions, we're happy to meet with you offline. We're happy to answer those questions in an intimate one-on-one conversation or consultation. But this is just educational purposes for today.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, so with the LLC, what it stands for, limited liability company. So what it is it's limiting your personal liability for things as much as possible, so that your personal assets are not going to be attacked if someone wants to sue you, if someone wants to come after you and say, you know what, I was, at your business and I experienced something that was detrimental to me, and so I'm going to sue you personally for that. So the limited liability helps protect you and your personal assets, like your house and cars and everything else. So they can only come after the assets that are inside of the company, as opposed to you personally. So the question that's going around a lot nowadays is, should I have an LLC? Should I have an S corp? What are the differences? So an LLC is the actual structure of the business, and then the S corp is the structure for tax purposes. So it's still going to be an LLC, and then you just actually make it for tax purposes an S corp. So here the difference is, LLC can be single member or it can be multi-member. The single member, what it is you get to get ownership draws out of the profits that are made. So you don't put yourself on payroll. You're not paying payroll taxes or anything. You're just being able to take an owner's draw. So when your taxes are filed, you're going to file any of those owner's draws. That's going to be filed on your personal taxes. Okay. So it's basically looked at as a sole proprietorship. There's nothing wrong with it, if you want to be a single member LLC, but that's just, how it is, and for tax purposes. So then, if it's going to be a multi-member LLC, you want to form it, and if you want to form it as an S corp, how that changes things is you have to pay yourself a reasonable salary. Now, what does reasonable mean? So it depends. Like,
The famous lawyer.
right.
It depends. 3 years of law school. It all just depends.
It depends. What are you doing in the business? Are you working full time? Are you working part time? What's the reasonable amount that people are getting paid for what you're doing? And so you can work with your tax professional to really find out, like, what does that really mean? So you have to pay yourself, but you pay yourself a reasonable amount. And then you can also take distributions off of the profits of the business. Those do not have to go through payroll. So you don't have to pay the payroll taxes off of that. So that's why, for tax purposes, a lot of people do like to, have the S Corp, and it saves them some money. But it just depends. It really depends on how profitable is your business, what type of revenue are you bringing in, and all of that, as to whether or not, the S Corp is a good idea or not. So then, if you don't want to be an S corp, but you're a multi-member LLC, that's where you do also so an LLC has members, and any of the members with a multi-member LLC have to either get paid what they call, like, you have to determine, like, guaranteed payments. So are you going to get paid, like, quarterly from the profits? Are you going to get paid weekly, bi-weekly, yearly? How are you guys going to do that? You can structure that, and that's something that I help you form in your operating agreement. Like, how do you want to structure those payments? But you have to figure out how every member is going to take some of the profits and get paid out of the LLC. So you can either do the guaranteed payments, or you can take distributions, just like you can with the S corp. And so those, the LLC gets to write off. You don't have to, claim that as like income for the LLC. So that's the benefit. But the members would all be filing that on their personal taxes. So then you would, it would be a K1, and then your tax professional would, make sure that, your whatever income that you're getting from the LLC is being accounted for, and then you would pay, taxes on that.
Mhm.
So those are the big differences between single member, multi-member, and then the S corp LLC.
Awesome. I'm going to ask you one other question, because I think it's good just to have the foundation around what's the difference, what should I be thinking. You guys, I see a couple notes being taken, which I appreciate that. But when you think about any types of permits or licenses, what do I need to make sure? What do I need to check for myself to make sure I'm not missing anything, to
Yeah.
make sure I'm legit,
Yeah.
right? And that we're doing things correct. Because this takes me to my next question, Carmen, on how do you protect what's happening. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about that.
So there are, obviously it depends state wise, but in Ohio, where there's definitely licensing that you have to have. Let's say, depending on what type of business you're in. So as attorneys, we have to have, professional licenses. Realtors have to have, professional, licenses. I believe coaches, maybe there's some licensing that you have. And so you pay those licensing. You do also have to, register with the state, with the county, so that you're paying sales tax on any income that you're generating, because you don't want to like not do that, and then they come after you and they're like, you did not register and
It's
you're
frowned
making
upon. I
money.
hear it's frowned upon. I mean, I don't know. I hear it's frowned upon.
Right.
That.
Just a little, just a little. You want to register, so that you're paying workers' comp if you have employees, because you definitely have to be paying into that, so that the that's accounted for. You can hire private firms that will take care of your any claims with workers' comp, or you can be state funded, and you just pay into the state, and then if there's any claims that are brought out, then the state will handle those for your LLC.
Yeah, that's good. And so hopefully, just even if you're just taking notes, right? Like around, okay, do I have an employee? Is it workers' comp? Do I have that registered? Should I think about that?
Mm-hmm.
What expertise am I in? And do I need a license? Should I register that? So hopefully these are just, if anything, use this as a check mark, a checklist, like done, done, and done.
Yeah.
So this already, I mean, obviously as a business owner, or all things I did in my first year or two to get myself even established here. But I think one of the things that I was very cognizant, like what happens if like I'm not here, it's just me. And so I think, so for Carmen, because I think that we need to be thinking, we think about a business, we need to be thinking about it holistically. Now, your strategic vision of what I want to do in 5 years, and like the what if something great happens, what if something not so great happens. So Carmen, can you tell us a little bit about what happens to a business if something happens to me personally? Like what happens, and what should we be thinking about?
Yeah. First, before I go into that, I just wanted to add to Sharece's point, especially when there's businesses that require licensures. One of the things that you have to think about is, how does that business transfer, right? So like lawyers, our firms, right? When you're a lawyer, you can't just transfer your business to someone who's not a lawyer, right? And so doctors, you can't just transfer your practice, your medical practice, to someone who's not a doctor. So if your business requires some sort of licensure, you have to make sure that you're transferring it according to the ethical rules of professional conduct in that industry, right? And so I just wanted to mention that really quickly before it slipped my mind. As far as what happens if to your business if something happens to you, so I think I'm going to answer that two-pronged, because if something happens to you, meaning you're incapacitated, right? So maybe you are still here on this earth, but you don't have your faculties with you to be able to still manage that business. Then hopefully you've attended this session and you have your financial powers of attorneys in place. When someone has a business, we talk about not only a personal financial power of attorney, but talking about a business financial power of attorney, because maybe the persons that I would want to manage my personal finances isn't the person that I want to manage my business, right? And I'll put the dramatic pause there, because if you have a key employee, right, or if you have a partner in your industry or whatever you're in your business, and that person is the best person to run the business, so maybe they have a business power of attorney to continue that business so that there's no interruption. Right. And so hopefully if you become incapacitated, or if there's if someone becomes incapacitated that owns a business, they have a business financial power of attorney, or that business is housed inside their trust, right? So that then the trustee can step in and figure out what happens to that business so it doesn't interrupt the services.
So I'm going to interrupt you because you said a word that I know recently, because obviously no endorsement here, but she's my state lawyer. But you said something about a trust, and so I think that's, if you could just maybe expand a little bit more about that. Like, should businesses be owned by a trust? How do you protect that? If you could just maybe give us a little more insight on that.
So I'm gonna say that we joked about earlier, 3 years of law school, and you get the whole "it depends" answer. Well, it depends, right? Generally, yes. Generally, yes. But it depends on what industry you're in,
Mm-hmm.
right? Again, we talk about our firms. I wouldn't necessarily have my firm inside my trust if I didn't have a spouse who is a licensed attorney as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because making that happen, so that's what the trust is going to do, is it's going to house and protect the LLC or the business, right? The corporation, whatever it is, it's going to house and protect that. But the trustee is simply going to decide how that transfers. The
Mm-hmm.
day-to-day operations is, hopefully you've attended this and you've talked to my good friend Sharece, and you have your operating agreement and your or your bylaws in good order, because that's what's going to give you day-to-day operations,
Mm-hmm.
right? And a lot of people confuse the two. They say,
Mm-hmm.
well, if it's in the trust, then I don't need any other operating document or bylaws document, because the trustee is going to be able to say everything. Your trustee may not know the business,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
It may be my husband or my son or whoever that may not know the business, and so you want to rely on good operating agreements and good bylaws to make sure that the day-to-day operation continues to be and work smoothly,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so they work. A lot of times I tell people, look, if you have a trust, sure, you can put your LLC in the trust, or you can make sure that your LLC ends up in your trust
Mm-hmm.
when you pass away, right? Through
Either way.
agreements that transfer that entity into your trust once you're gone. But again, it's not going to do you any good if your operating agreement says that no one but your partners can own that business,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
so, like, that's why it's so important that these documents speak to each other, and that you have the attorneys in specialty areas that are going to guide you through, because I can do and make all of the things happen on the estate planning side, but if you don't have a solid business attorney looking at your operating agreement or your bylaws or all your organizational documents, corporate records, they're going to conflict, and it's going to create more chaos than it's going to help.
Right. Yeah. And that's good. So let's take it back one step, right? Because now we're like, we understand the reason why to have the documents and what happens. But if we just go back to day one, like what documents or contracts, Sharece, should we be considering on day one when we're starting a business, just to make sure we're hitting the ground running on in day one, and we're at least starting in the right step, like on the right step. Again, maybe this is a checklist, because I think one of the things, as our community, I think we can say here, transparently here together, that sometimes we don't think about. We think about, let's start a business, or this is my dream, let's do it. But sometimes we just don't have the circle to tell us, like, how do we make that step work effectively, or what should we be doing differently? And so part of today is make sure we have our checklist and make sure we have our information, and then who to contact. So if you could just maybe share some light on, like, what are the contracts, or what are the pieces that we need on day one to make sure we're right, we're in good steps.
Yeah, it's so important when you're formatting your LLC, that obviously your operating agreement, and that operating agreement is going to determine how your business runs. Who are the members and what are their roles in your business? So the operating agreement is crucial, and you want an attorney to form the operating agreement. I know most people in here have started businesses, but what happens when an attorney formulates your LLC is that you have that anonymity. So it gives you pretty much like, you're invisible. And if people want to come after you, they don't necessarily automatically know your name. Once you file documents with the state, and I know there's a lot of, things out there where it's like easy, just file it on your own and you can just go online and do it, and you can, but then your name is on there. And those documents, once they're filed, like, you can't take them off the state's website. So you can update documents and everything, but your name is still going to be on there, and it just opens you up to more exposure. So when, as an attorney drafting it for you, I'm able to put my name as the agent, and not that I have any ownership in your company. I'm just able to act as the agent of record for your business. And so if there's like court documents or something like that, they'll serve me in addition to whatever address that is on, for the business. And but they won't necessarily know who you are individually as a person. So that's having an attorney form the LLC for you is absolutely crucial. But your operating agreement, of course, getting an EIN number so that's your business's social security number. And then when you'll get a certificate also from the state. That's important. All those documents you can take to the bank and open up your bank account and begin. But once you're in business, you're potentially interacting with a lot of other business owners, vendors. Do you have contracts with them that identify the scope of, your business operations and agreements? How are you getting paid? When are you getting paid? What if there's disagreements? What if you want to get out of the contract? Do you have to give notice? How do you give notice? Is it in writing, or can I just tell you, that I don't want to do this anymore? So, all those things are so important so that it's clear. What are the terms? How are we functioning? And if there's disagreements, we can go back to the four corners of this document and say, this is what we agreed on, and this is, we're doing it or we're not doing it. So independent contractors, I know a lot of people in here probably are dealing with independent contractors. And a lot of times, the thought is, well, this is my friend, or, we're cool, it's fine, you know what, we'll be fine. But when you're not fine, you want to have a contract to go back to. So those are some of the, most important ones. Are you selling things online? If you're selling things online, then you want to make sure that you have the website. What are your terms and policies and all for selling, and privacy policies for your website? Because are you collecting people's data and information? Are you collecting emails and communicating with people? Because you want to make sure that people understand what your policy is around that, and can they opt out of an email that service subscription that they have with you. So those are all ones. Do you have, if you're in real estate, do you have commercial leases? Do you have residential leases that are thorough and not just like a couple pages that you got offline and probably don't really protect you and may not even have like Ohio law, factored into it? Because
That's true. Yeah.
I have seen some really, really, I'll say interesting things. And this is why I'm so passionate about it, because when when I help someone to update like a lease or a contract or something, and they're like, oh,
Right.
wow, like I didn't even think about all of these things. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I know. And you were so open for, just things not going your way, basically. So yeah, I would say
No,
those are some of them.
that's good. So I mean, even if you're taking notes, so like she said a lot, right? That I think it's a lot of good information. Like look at your most recent, like your leases. What are your contracts? If you're selling online, what are your policies? What are the agreements? What type of information are you sharing? Again, if you're starting a business or if you already are in business, again, that's your checklist of like, am I doing this the right way? I think now that you have the knowledge, you're starting to get more knowledge or just confirmation of your knowledge. I think this is a great way. We're starting the new year in 26. This is a great opportunity for us to be thinking about that. As you're saying all these things, I actually wrote down two things that made me think, oh, let me check my privacy policy on my website because I'm in the process of updating it. And it is true because you're taking email addresses.
Mhm.
I'm taking email addresses from car transactions and sending them information. Is there liability even with that? What you think is an easy marketing, like I'm going to reach out to them, but do I have the disclaimers all set up, right? Everything to protect you. I think we live in a world today that we trust with open hearts, but not the world isn't as trusting back. And so we just need to make sure we protect ourselves. So in that line, and I'm going to pause for after I ask her this question, he answers, I'm going to open it up to you. Is there any specific questions as we started this conversation that you guys want to ask, because although, like I said, we curated like 30 questions to kind of start this conversation, we want to make sure that it's intentional or beneficial to you all. So Carmen, so we've talked a lot about all the starting protection, like what are the documents we need to be thinking about. But I know in your area specifically, what kind of asset protection should we be considering? And I think it's important to be thinking about this at the onset, so you build that into your plan. So when you think about that, like what kind of what should we be thinking about in that space?
Yeah. So I also wanted to touch base on, so Sharece said when we first sat down, she said, when you think about preparing your business documents, you thinking about the marriage, right? All the great things that are going to happen with this business, and hardly anyone thinks about the divorce process, right? And I always tell clients, like, all is fair in love and war, right? Especially in my area of practice, all is fair in love and war. And so I love that you made it clear that these documents are not created equal, right? Self-help documents, when clients come into my office and they have an operating agreement that they've printed off, they've Googled and they've printed off, and it's 2 pages long, I'm like, you need to see my friend, because this document isn't going to cover you in the event that things go wrong. So I just wanted to mention that, because that's one of the things that I didn't really learn or know until I started my own practice and merged with a partner, right? Like, I was thinking about, how am I going to get paid? How much am I going to get paid? Are we going to have employees? How much am I going to get paid? Am I going to get paid? Right? Like, that's where my mind was. It wasn't about like, well, what if he decides he doesn't like how I move? Or what if I don't like him? Right? I wasn't thinking about that. I wasn't thinking about, like, what if one of us passes away? Yeah. Like, how does the company dissolve? Like,
Right.
do we have life insurances on each other? Or like, who, like, what if he decides he's the majority partner, he wants to bring another lawyer in, and I'm like, who's this Harpo, right? Like, I don't know this person.
Right.
It's 3 is a crowd, right?
Right,
And so
right.
like, those are all questions, and I didn't think of all of that. Like, your work is so valuable in that space, because there's none of that I thought of. Again, I thought about 3 things, like, am I gonna get paid? Did I say that already? Anyway,
No, I don't think so. Did you ever think about getting paid? Was that a thought, like, for you?
that might have been
Maybe
thought,
one,
right?
one.
Like, so as far as protecting, a lot of times that happens through, obviously the trust, making sure that your LLC documents are in good place, because you've visited my good friend and she's got you all set up. Your LLC is now either in your trust or going to your trust upon your death. And making sure that the terms of the trust, again, these self-help documents, I don't care what chat GPT tells you. Like, AI is great for a lot of things. AI is not a human mind. AI is only as good as what you put into it. And unless you spent 3 years in law school, 3 years plus in law school for some of us, you don't know what to input respectfully into that search engine to get what you need to get out of it, right? And so I say that to all of my clients that come in and say, well, can you review this document that I printed off of, I don't know, whatever AI engine they're using? So I'll say that, like, your trust document has to be very specific. That's what's going to transfer that's what's going to make it smooth in transferring your LLC to where it's going to get to. And even with that, your operating agreements, I said earlier, is going to determine how that happens. So protection is part of that, making sure that you're investing in estate planning succession documents, that your personal estate plan and your business estate plan speak to each other, that they're not fighting, that there's not this tug of war, right? The other part of that is, do you have adequate insurance to cover it, right? Like, do you have adequate insurance to cover that business? Do you have adequate insurance that if you are in an LLC with more than one member, and it's not a sole proprietorship, like, do you have enough insurance to buy out the partner? Because again, do you want someone else, if your partner passes away, do you want someone else infiltrating that business that hasn't been, down in the weeds with you for 15, 20 years?
Yeah.
Right? Do you want that partner's child to be your partner now?
Right.
Like, and so making sure you have adequate insurance, making sure that your estate planning mirrors your business succession plan, mirrors your estate planning. What does your succession document say? What does your bylaw say? What does your operating agreement say if it's a LLC? all of those things to be able to protect
Mhm.
your asset.
Right, absolutely. And I think that's a good, and sitting here is just someone to help moderate the conversation. But as a business owner, 3 years in, one of the things that caught me by surprise was this whole insurance factor. So we are not insurance experts, right?
Yeah.
So we put that disclaimer, but it is
But
something
it's
that I
important.
necessarily didn't consider in my overall
Mhm.
business plan and my overall business budget.
Mhm.
And if you don't have it, no judgments. Again, just put that on your checklist of what's required for you, what's required within your space, similar to what certifications you need to kind of validate your business. I
Sure.
think insurance, and you both had mentioned stuff around taxes as well. And so having your tax person, all of these specialties exist for a reason. And I
Yeah.
think it's a good point because I use ChatGPT
Yeah.
like daily, but
I mean,
it's not the answer to
yeah, for sure.
everything.
And people think like, so generally speaking, your trust is going to say, if you have 4 children, I'm going to, disperse my assets equally to my 4 children, right? And so I often have to have the conversation with clients is like, do you want equal distributions or do you want equitable distributions? Because they're not the same,
Mhm.
right? They're not the same. And so do you want, your business to be split amongst 4 children when, Junior has been the only one that knows the ins and outs of the business? Why would you split it 4 ways? That's the quickest way for a business to die,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
so like those are the things that you have to talk about and think about when you're thinking about asset protection. It's not just making sure that it transfers, but how is it transferring and
Mhm.
to whom is it transferring to? If you have a key employee who's been your employee for years and years and can run the business, and you can take 3 weeks vacation because you have this key employee,
Right.
why wouldn't that key employee be part of the succession plan?
Right.
Why are you then inserting your kids who have
Yeah.
have no interest,
Yeah.
Right.
in being part of the business?
Which is actually a valid point. The reason I am the owner of this bar is because no kid, no family member actually wanted it. So there was actually no succession plan. So the relationship I built, it was kind of my in and how I got this. And so, sad for him as someone who's built this for 30 years, right? Because he wanted it to be something that his family would take on. We became more family than I think them. Sorry for another day after drinks. But I think that's a good point. I think sometimes we don't think about that. Like, what is my succession plan? You hear that word more like in corporate, like what's a succession plan for that leader? But you are a leader in your own right. You are the CEO of your company and you need to act and treat it as such. And so I think it's important to be thinking about what's your succession. So add that to your to-do list. If I hit the lottery tomorrow and I started this business because this was going to be my next ticket for the next 10 to 15 years, and here you got an accelerated path, so we won't be morbid and say, but who's the succession plan for that? And I think even the equitable versus equity is huge. I mean, we've had some hard conversations, Carmen and I, about who would manage my business, and then also who I would trust as a person to advise on that's not even blood related to me. And that's a hard reality, but one as a CEO to your startup, to what you're trying to drive, is a very important one. So I'm going to pause for 2 seconds because I see not like heads nodding, which is great. We've had some new folks join us. Hopefully you have your wine because this is a legal pour. Like, so we're like pouring in goodness. But any questions? It could be from anything. I still have over 20 questions to go. Are there any questions that you have off the top of your head? And it could be from any specific area. We got 2 experts here. No, please.
So I guess there's 2 questions. One, we talked about a lot of documents that you need right when you're starting a business. Where are these documents stored? We talked about registering your business with the state. Is that something that you can just always access with the state? Or is it something you need to do on your own? Or digitally everything's in the cloud? And then second, when should you update these documents? What like your insurance? What life changes are happening, or what things are happening where you're like, oh, I need to change my business documents to know these things.
So, yes, you should absolutely keep all your documents. When I do LLC formations for my clients, I give you a binder with all of your documents inside of it. So, my hope is that you will keep that binder somewhere and, be able to reference that. The Ohio doesn't require like annual filings of like minutes and all, but I do recommend that you look at your operating agreement at least annually because you want to see okay, have you added another member? Maybe you're no longer a single member LLC anymore. Maybe you want to, expand it and become a multi-member. And if you do, is that person contributing to the LLC in some capacity? Because that's going to change things also. So, and are you changing just in terms of how you're operating things? Because those are areas that, yeah, you want to update that operating agreement at least once a year. And then the contracts that you have with different, let's say, independent contractors, vendors, or other people that you're working with, have the terms changed? Because sometimes, when you're working with someone at the beginning, it's, well, our agreement is that I'm going to do 10 coaching sessions a year. And then you realize, oh, we're actually doing 20 now, but your contract still only is reflecting the 10. So I say with those, kind of like constantly be looking at those if you're changing, the terms, the scope of the actual agreement, then to update that definitely. But it really depends on the type of business that you're in and what you're doing, because sometimes some companies, the terms and all may not be changing that drastically. So once a year is enough. But in terms of storing, it does depend on your comfort level. I mean, yeah, you can store things on the cloud, or you can, have that binder and put it on a bookshelf, and then it's paper. But both is probably the best idea, so that you always have access to it. And you also asked about the state filings
Send it to
are
your best
always
friend.
available online. You can access those
Send it to your
anytime,
best
and
friend.
those will never go away. Hmm.
Perfect. Awesome. No, that's awesome. Did you guys take notes? I actually wrote a note because I'm like annual, and I'm 3 years in. I got to figure that out. Go ahead. Question.
A question piggybacking off what she asked. As far as the operating agreement, the only thing you would change is, let's say you're going from sole member LLC to multi-member, or multi-member to sole member. Is there anything else you would change other than your operating agreement?
The operating agreement is the most important thing. Unless with the EIN number, I mean, if you're still going to be involved, then that can, although that would change too, because that does say sole member, so you would have to change that also. Yeah, those are the two things.
Yeah. Selfish plug to these ladies because they've been such an asset to me. I think because it's so different based on the business. So when I think about me being a bar owner and my licenses that I have to renew every year, whether it's food and beverage, my alcohol license, all this stuff, I've changed my operating ways of working twice now. So I think depending on the business. So again, so pick up a card if even just to have that first kind of conversation, just to maybe ask specifics of your business too. And this is meant to kind of trigger like your thought there. But because it's trigger thoughts. I'm taking notes too. Any questions today? Any other hands? Yes, sir.
NDAs, non-disclosure agreements.
Mhm.
How well do they protect? So I'm in the process of creating a new product. I have to work with manufacturers, um, potential investors, and professional reviewers of this product, right? And I need to create a non-disclosure agreement to protect in all those different categories. But um, there is a potential in these transactions, and someone might take the information and decide, hey, I have money, I can move a lot faster
Mhm.
and kind of take off before
Yeah.
I get the opportunity.
Well, that's what they're there to design to protect. So it depends on how well they're written. But yeah, they should. I mean, they should protect you enough. But I mean, in the legal aspect, like we have said, it does depend. And I mean, you're as protected as the four corners, provide the protection. And when something comes up, then there's a potential for litigation, but you can always go back to the agreement that you did have. So I mean, and it's something to, if you already have one drawn, then that's something I could look at and help determine how protected you are.
Because I'm working with a patent attorney.
Yeah, I was
Got my
just gonna say
patent
that. Yep.
initiated, but talking to my patent attorney, they said there's not really a lot they can do without spending a lot of money if it leaks, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's the thing with everything, right? You
Yeah.
don't know how good of a document you have
Until
until the divorce happens. right?
Right.
I mean, I'm just gonna be
Right,
honest.
right,
I'm amongst
right,
family,
yeah.
I think, right? And
Mhm.
so it's like you're not gonna know what can go wrong until it goes wrong.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so important to make sure that you're insulating yourself with, again, the investment of not self-help documents, of seeing someone who's professional and respected in that industry, in that area of law. Because one of the things we joked about earlier is that people think that you graduate from law school and then you just magically know how to be and are, you know, an ace of every law that's out there. And people ask all kinds of questions, no matter what kind of law. We already said what we specialized in, right? But they're asking me things about criminal law, and I'm just kind of like, I mean, I think that's a class I took in law school, maybe allegedly. I think I was there, right? But I don't practice in criminal law. I have no idea, right? And so, like, people sometimes say to me, well, my best friend is a lawyer, and they helped me draft these estate planning documents. And I say, well, what kind of lawyer is your best friend? And then they're like, well, he's a personal injury attorney. And I'm like, guys, like, help me help you, right? And so, like, you really have to make sure that you're investing in someone who is respected, so that you know that you're insulated the most. But nothing is foolproof, right? Like, clients will come up and they'll say, can you guarantee that this document is going to effectuate my wishes when I pass away? And I said, well, if you're asking for a guarantee, then I'm not your person, because I'm not going to guarantee anything. What I can guarantee is that I have the skill set, I have the criteria, I have the credentials, I've been doing this for a long time. I stay up on my craft. The documents that I prepare are solid documents based on the industry. But I'm not going to guarantee anything, right? Because no one guarantees anything. And so the best way, circling back to answer that question, is finding someone that's respected in that field, going to them and making the investment, because at least you know you've done everything that you could. Because unfortunately, we live in a world that anyone will sue anyone for any reason, whether they have a leg to stand on or not. And unfortunately, for the person that's getting sued, is you have to defend it. So if someone is stealing your idea, whether it was legitimate or not, whether they had the ability to do it or not, whether you had a DNA or not, like, it doesn't matter. You'll still have to spend money to defend it. So the best you can do is tighten up, right?
And have it in place. And yeah.
And so that's a good question, because I know that's one that you and we talked about in prep for this session is, do I need to worry about the intellectual property, right? Intellectual property, whether it's my knowledge, whether it's the product itself. So
Absolutely.
in short, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
And then, so for someone who's either starting or in that space, obviously either working with a small business lawyer to kind of help understand, okay, what are the parameters of that intellectual property or tangible product property, and help define what that parameter is, and then creating the right, whether it's an NDA, disclosures, patents, etc., to protect it. But the sad and hard truth, if I'm hearing you correctly, is until someone tries to take it, or until someone is trying to, like, they'll question, so it's almost like work with an attorney, not ChatGPT, to really think about, well, what happens if this? What happens if that? Where is this product going? Where is it going to be manufactured?
Is it enforceable?
Is it enforceable?
I mean, is it enforceable?
Is it even enforceable? Which is a really good point.
Right.
I don't necessarily want to share that I'm in HR, but which is another thing. But some states don't even enforce non-disclosure agreements, are not enforceable by states, and from a personal perspective. And so that's another thing to be considered, because some states are starting to go the other way. So depending on what you're creating or what you're selling or what you're doing, I think that's something else to be considered. The uniqueness that you want to bring to that product, and what your cost is to protect that uniqueness. So that's a kind of a measure, I think, of questioning for you as well.
I think Tony wants to offer a suggestion.
3 very brief things, tagging on to it 1,000 years ago when I practiced law, augmenting what you guys said. What I didn't hear is make sure Sharece has used the term 4 corners a couple of times. That means within the document, right? From the first word to the last word, the last signature, that's the 4 corners. So if you include anything in that contract that's to be a part of it, such as an NDA, that gives it added strength. because it's not a standalone document.
Right.
And please correct me
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
it's changed in 1,000 years, but then it becomes a part of that contract. So it gives it more
Teeth.
teeth.
Yeah.
I was gonna say vitality because I'm getting old. I just it's a thing, right? But it becomes a part of it too. Don't rush to market, right? Because if you rush to market, someone will see an opportunity to steal your product out from under you
That's
before you have a strong claim. They'll say we took pieces of this intellectual property and we built upon it, and that we augmented. Therefore, it's no longer just yours; it's ours. And then also to both counselors' point is that once you do put it out there, someone may have. I'm sorry, let me scratch that. Let me not equivocate. Someone who has the audacity to steal it has more money than you.
Yeah.
And they will feel unequivocally that they can beat you in court.
Yeah.
And they can wind you down to where you no longer have it and you'll settle for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
Which even those pennies on the dollar may be more than what you anticipated making and then selling it in the market. But just appreciate that it may try to exploit your weakness, which goes back to point 2. Make sure you don't rush to market something that's incomplete. And that if you do that, any relationships you have, explicit or tangential, all are connected to that contract versus a standalone document. Okay, I'm quiet. I'm going to go back to being the cameraman.
No, you're hey, multi-role. That's good. Awesome question.
For Sharece and Carmen.
Do ask.
2 different questions. So the first one I asked you, Sharece, what's the importance of not piercing the corporate veil? And as an attorney, what would you look at when you're going after somebody's business that they've been working?
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Working hard.
That's good. That's good. That's good.
Yeah. So piercing the corporate veil, really what the courts are looking at is how personally involved were you in the business as opposed to like the business operating on its own. So like, are you with your business bank account, are you buying things for yourself out of that bank account as opposed to using, your own personal bank account to buy things for you personally that are not business related? And so they take a look at a lot of different things to see how involved you are personally in the business, to say, actually, you're not running this as a business, you're running this, as an individual. So someone can come after you personally and you can be liable for the things that supposedly your business did, but you didn't really do, because it was really just you individually just doing, interacting with people. So kind of, I hope that explained things kind of like simply, but so you don't want the courts to say that you did that, and that if someone comes after you, you're personally liable. And so they can come after your house and your cars and any other personal assets that you have in your bank account and all of that. So you really want to separate things. That's why having that bank account, like getting that business bank account set up. And I know that's a thing that, especially a lot of small business owners, they're just like, I haven't had time to open up the business account. I'm just going to run everything through my, personal PNC bank. And it's like, you're taking payments from people in your personal bank account, whether it's through like Etsy or however, you PayPal, or I don't know if people still use that anymore, Cash App, but it's all going to your personal bank account. And so you're saying you're operating, Rudy's Bakery, and that's how you interact with people. But it's all going to Michael Curry's, personal bank account when you get payments. So it's like, no, you're operating as an individual, not as Rudy's, bakery. So those are things that you have to separate personal versus business transactions that you're doing, so that your business is acting as its own entity, and your personal is acting as, its own, as a person. And you can take those monies out of your out of your business bank account and put them in your, when you're taking your, your withdrawals out, you can take it and put it in your personal. It's just don't use the business bank
It's like the
account.
day-to-day
Yeah.
operations of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like don't commingle.
Commingle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The commingling.
It's like a
Yeah.
life lesson in general.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
And I think and I think
Yeah.
that I'll take it one step further. So like even Sharece talks a lot about contracts, right? Your contracts with your vendors. Are you signing as you?
Right.
Or are you signing as a member of your LLC? Right.
Yeah.
And so like because I don't know, I told you I practice a very niche practice, and I don't pretend to be a litigator. I don't pretend to be any other type of attorney. But what I do know from law school is that if you commingle money, and my client comes to me and says to me, well, they're really, she signed the contract as Sharece, and she didn't sign it as her law firm, or she didn't sign it as this, that, and the other. I'm not going to use you because that's too. Somebody else signed the contract as their personal self and not through their business. And they come to me, I'm going to tell them, go hire an attorney. And I not only want you to go after that business, I want you to go after all of her assets, because now her business is just her alter ego and nothing more, right? Now you're just kind of like, there's no difference between company and person. Now I'm going to go after all of it, or your attorney who you hire, because I'm not going to do anything besides get probably a referral fee. But I'm not going to do anything. But I'm going to say, like, go after all of it. Why wouldn't you go after all of it, right? Mm-hmm. She's transferring money so loosey-goosey between account A and her personal name and the business name. She's borrowing money, rental properties. I have a lot of clients who have rental properties, and they have
in their personal name,
in their personal name, or even in LLCs. I have a client who was like so excited because he has 7 rental properties, and he had LLC 1, LLC 2, LLC 3, and I was like, yeah, that's really, really good. And so I was like, well, how are you operating in those entities? And he's like, well, when my bar needed to fix X, Y, and Z, I just went into bank account for house rental 3, took the money out, and paid for my bar. And I was like, oh, so you've commingled money, right? Mm-hmm. You've lost the protection now, because if something happens at your bar, I'm taking that house too. Well, not me, I already said. But we're going to come after that house too, right? Mm-hmm. Because now you're like married to the house. The bar and the house are married. What other accounts you got out there that you're doing? Mm-hmm. Because if that's what you're doing, and not that you, to your point, not that you can't do it, but go to Sharece so she can get a loan agreement, so that there's a loan between LLC number 4 and bar. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you're borrowing money, and she's going to create the documents, because that's not what I do. I just know enough to be dangerous.
But I think it's such a valid point, because I think when we're talking to small business or startup or whatnot, we think like, oh, let me just move $1,000 and help them. Let me do that. Let me just give 10,000 here or whatnot. But the implications, if and when something would go wrong, huge mistake, or if we need to change the course of how we do things, trust that banks will check back records. Bank will figure out how your assets were given and whatnot. And at the end of the day, the goal here is to protect, to advise on doing it right, to protect your assets, and help you start thinking about how to do things more accurately, legally, accurately, and just not just we need a hustler grit mentality, but we need to be doing things right. Do you have a question? Yes.
So how do you sign as your business?
You can sign as member. You can say, like, you can put member, or if depending on what your role is in the LLC, if you're president, vice president, secretary, you can sign as that for your business. And no matter what you're doing, always sign like that. Even when you go to the bank, like if you're withdrawing things or depositing things, you know how that you have to sign on it. Make sure you put that, like, comma, member or something like that for your business, so that it's not just like you individually. And the banks, believe me, I've had them tell me, you're not allowed to put that, and I'm like, yes, I am, and I will, because that, that's protecting me. And I've had this interaction with, like, bank tellers, and I'm sorry if anybody here is a bank teller. I'm not like trying to say that, you're bad or anything. But sometimes they just don't understand the law and the implications that it can be if you are just like signing off just personally on, when you're withdrawing things from the LLC. So always, put like member after it, or, your role in the LLC, whatever your
It has issues similar with the bank, but sometimes people write, instead of writing it to the business, they write it
to you
my name.
personally. Yes,
So
yes, yeah.
I create an LLC with my name to go around that sometimes because they don't want to rewrite a check and things like that.
Yeah.
So you created an LLC like with your name, like your name,
CM
CM.
LLC.
So what you're saying.
But the same issue.
Yeah.
The same issue, right? Because if
No,
you
not necessarily because it still says CM Woods and I have DBA CM. Like my LLC CM Woods LLC, but then with the bank it also says CM Woods DBA CM Woods, so they can cash that check.
I think that's an offline conversation
Yep.
because I think that there's
Yeah,
still a lot
yeah.
of issues there.
Yes,
yeah.
yes,
Not what
yes,
you
yes,
think.
yes.
I mean, it's closer than you appear. What does the mirror say? It's closer than it appears in the mirror.
I get where you're going with that, but yeah, we could talk.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And you had another question for
Oh, my bad.
No, go ahead,
Oh, no.
and then we'll get.
So, what would you tell somebody if they say, "Hey, they're only 30. They don't need to be thinking about estate planning. That's something for people that's older. Like when you're hitting 90. Okay, now think about estate
No.
planning."
Yeah.
No, I think that's too late.
Yeah. So that's probably one of the biggest myths, and I think, and I'm gonna stick my neck out there to say it. It's one of the biggest myths in the Black and Brown community, unfortunately, right? Because I think that some of our counterparts are born into trusts, right? So estate planning to them isn't foreign. They know what an estate planning document is from inception, right? And so I think that for us, and I always tell people, it's like a lot of times clients will come to me and they'll say just that, right? I'm too young, or I don't have money, or this is too costly. Well, first of all, it's an investment, so I'm not gonna negate that. But as soon as you turn 18 years old, anyone that turns 18 years old needs an estate plan. Now, the level of sophistication within that estate plan varies. So I'm not gonna, unless someone is wealthy at 18, I'm not gonna draw up the same plan for an 18-year-old usually that I would draw up with someone that has assets. So it may be a simpler plan. But look, I joke around. My son got married. He was in his early 20s. A wedding gift to him was estate planning documents, right? My daughter just turned 18 years old. We did her documents, right? Because now I can't call the doctor and schedule an appointment for you because you're 18, right? So you had to sign that healthcare power of attorney to give me authority to call your doctor, right? My son was married, but year 3 of the marriage, he's like, "Who's my doctor again?" Right? And I'm like, "And what does this mean?" And I'm like, I don't know, son, because I wasn't there, right? "Well, could you call my doctor?" And I'm like, I can't unless I had this document, right? And so I say all that to say 18 years old, you have to have especially if you're a parent that's very involved in your child's life, to make sure that they're good. They're going to school, sometimes going to school away from you in a foreign place without, letting them fly is one thing, but without having the knowledge and experience that this world is. And then some people are in their 30s, but they have kids of their own. And so they say to me, "I have no assets." And I'm like, "You have a 2-year-old. Like,
Right.
is that not an asset? Like,
Yeah.
it's an asset and a liability. Arguably, however, it's an asset, right?
Yeah.
Because where else are you going to name or nominate a guardian for your minor child if something happens to you in these streets, right? Because we live in these streets. Right.
Yeah.
Right?
No, and I think that's I think it was a good question just to even open up, like add that to your checklist, right? Like don't start estate planning at 90 or 80. Too late, right?
Yeah.
At 18, like what do you want to protect? What do you want to hand off? What does that look like? And maybe it's a bigger investment for others. Maybe it's just that next step investment. But when you start thinking about what you want to protect tomorrow, if you're not here or if something changes, it's a huge. And then to me, that was a big question mark when Carmen and I first talked. Like, I know people in my circle that would make a choice for me, and I know who I want to make the choice for me.
Right.
And that's a very different thing.
Yeah,
And so having the right documentation for that is important.
Right. I just to add to that too, it's like I say this all the time, and I say it jokingly because if you've not picked up anything from this conversation, is that I don't take myself too seriously, and I'm going to joke about everything that there's to joke about. But when I got married, which will be 3 years in August, naming my husband and changing my documents, updating my documents to name my husband as my healthcare agent, because and also going further to doing or signing a living will, my end of life, what I want my end of life plans to be, not to be morbid, but I know that if we're sitting in a room in the hospital and I'm essentially brain dead, which is what triggers this living will document, right? That my mom and my kids would totally be like, oh, she's fine. Look, her eyes moved. And the doctor is like, that's the air conditioning. Like her eyelashes are moving because of the air conditioning in here. She's brain dead. And my mom would be like, no, keep her alive until I'm gone, or or after that. My kids would be the same way. I wanted to take that pressure off of my husband and my mom and my kids, because ideally, if I go first, I want them to have a relationship. I don't want my kids to be looking at my husband like you pulled the plug, right? Like, because again, I told you in the beginning, newsflash, none of us are going to survive, right? And so, like, I don't want them to look at him like he made this choice, right? I want it to be like, no, the choice was mine, right? You talked about the freedom of choice, the making sure that you have that autonomy to make that choice. That document took that from anyone. I made it myself.
Yeah.
So that's important too, to talk about that, because again, you have, I'm Latina, and I'm telling you, my Puerto Rican mom is not
Facts.
at all
Totally.
taking me off life support.
Right.
Like,
No.
she would be like, she would be the person to be like, no, bring her back. She got another 7 to 15 years.
I know. It's
in
not
her,
a cat.
right?
No, I
Like,
hear you.
So
I know we had a question here. I'm sorry. I wanted to get to you and your question. Please.
Going back to the co-mingling with the funds, how do you avoid that? So could that have been avoided? So when I'm a single person LLC, how do you pay yourself?
Yeah.
You can avoid that situation. That's my first question.
Oh, that's the so since it's a single member LLC, you can just take an owner's draw.
It's an owner's draw.
Yep, meaning any profits that are off of that you generate. Let's say you generate $5,000 in profits. I mean, you just take that, and then of course you're going to report that to your tax professional. Yeah.
And just to clarify, just to make sure, from the business account that funded it,
Yeah.
right? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Just to make sure that, because that was a new thing. If you had different LLCs, that was good information. So like, as long as it's one account to the next. Okay. No, that was good.
Okay. And then the other question is, sort of like his situation. How do you explain the difference, so I'm developing a digital product that's going to be licensed. Is that different than trademark?
Yeah.
Can you explain the difference?
Yeah. I mean, the trademark's going to protect like your name,
right?
And then the licensing that you have to get, you have to be
I'm going to get a product license. A digital product is going to be licensed to go into different organizations for different companies.
Okay.
And it's going to come under the name that I haven't trademarked.
Yeah.
Do I have to actually trademark the product? Does that make sense?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah.
Okay.
In short, yes.
Yes.
Trademark the name, the product,
Yes.
everything, and then the process to license it after it. Yes. And that's the complexity, right? You think you did one part of this.
Right.
And so I think that's why it's important to have a conversation like, well, this is the whole picture of what I want to do. I want to make a product. I might have an app. I might have a licensing thing. What do I need to do in each step to make sure I did it correctly from the beginning? So no one sneaks in, to Tony's point, and says, well, I'm just adding on. And it's like, no, I'm just still ready. So like thinking about that, I think makes a lot of sense. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I know we had a little bit of a later start, so we're about 7:40. I want to ask if there's any other questions in the room. I had a couple other questions, but I think conversationally we got them. But is there any other questions in the room? Because we also wanted to reserve another like 20, 30 minutes. We're not leaving till like 8:30. We're open till 10 here tonight. So enjoy some charcuterie, more wine and whatnot. We wanted to give some opportunity now that we started the conversation. So you guys can all like swarm and be like, well, here's my personal question and ask them, right? So we wanted a little bit of that privacy as well. But any other kind of general questions that we have to ask?
I'll break it down.
Okay.
Just to be sure, just so I can make sure I'm clear. So when you're saying sign as the company, you sign your name and then put president or member or treasurer or whatever, or just make sure you're not signing like.
So are you signing the company's name or your personal name?
Yeah.
That's what you're asking.
Or your role, company name or your role in the company or both or what?
I mean, I recommend sign it as the company, and then, put your name, comma, and then member of the company, of the LLC.
Company, my name, company, comma, my name.
No, sorry, I said that. I said that wrong. You could put your name and then comma member of of the LLC.
LLC.
Yeah.
So you're not signing on behalf of your membership in that company. Okay, got you. That's awesome.
Would you suggest that if they're documents that they're originating, they already have it typed in? So, for example, they're signing their name, but it's already written in Anthony W. Scott, President.
You said,
would you suggest that?
Yeah, I'm saying, would you suggest that as a way of establishing a continual practice?
oh,
If you're initiating your own document, so you're always signing.
yes, it's always the same. Yeah. That makes it easier. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Or go. No, please.
Oh,
This.
okay. So
Don't charge Marcus.
So I'm starting a business. Why do I need an attorney? Y'all are expensive, and I see you as as an expense. Tell me why I should bear that expense.
Because your business is going to scale, baby.
Right. I would rather you spend the money up front to be protected than on the back end to not be protected, and then you're going to wind up spending more money, or you're going to lose your company, or you're just going to run into more issues. And yes, it is an expense upfront. It absolutely is. I would just factor that in when you're starting the business, that this is just an expense that I'm going to have to pay, because you're going to feel better about your business when you know that it's protected more.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like insurance, health insurance. You feel better when you're like, okay, I know I have health insurance. If I get sick, I can go to the hospital or a doctor, and I don't have to worry about like, oh my gosh, the only option I have is to go to like the ER, and I'm gonna have to wait like 20 hours to get seen or something. It's just that you just have more security in your business. And I mean, it's your baby. It's something that you want to do. It's your you're excited about it all. Get it started the right way.
Yeah.
And I think too, just to add on to that part of it is, again, you don't know if you think it's expensive to talk to a lawyer on the front end.
Yeah.
See, it's on the back end.
Yeah.
I tell clients that all the time. I'm not afraid to say, here's my price, right? Because I know what it's going to take to get what you want, right? Here's my price. And if they say it's too much, I'm happy to refer them to someone that may do it cheaper. I'm happy to make that referral, right? But what I will say to them is that if you do nothing, if you think the cost of establishing these documents are expensive, just wait until you need it, right? Because one of my, I said in the beginning that I do estate planning, preventative work, if you will, in the beginning, and try to solve for issues that may happen on the back end. The clients that come to me that have done nothing when their loved one passes away, I'm making bank.
Yeah.
Like
It's
honey,
so
like it's a percentage whether I do the work or not, right? Like I'm getting a percentage of the estate, right? And so like it's a lot more expensive if you don't invest on the front end.
And I think, and so 2 points to that, as a friend of the space and also as an entrepreneur myself and a business owner, facts. Like when I think about so from an estate planning perspective, I'm 10 years in trying to still figure out my father's estate. And it has cost me maybe 5 times what it would have cost me just to do what I need to do now. So when I think about myself as an entrepreneur, owning this business, owning 2 businesses, and my assets that I have, I will that's a sacrifice that it's not going to happen. Like that's not going to happen where it's just going to fall into like the government's hands to figure out. So I think about when people are thinking, I'm going to invest, $25,000 in whatever, be thinking I want to invest 22.5 or 22,000 or 21 because 3 is for my legal and asset protection. So like build that into your initial investment costs because that is part of what you're investing in. The longevity of protection is the way I look at it. And so that's just something to think about and if you're just still in the beginning, take 10 minutes. I mean, we have 10 minutes, 30 minutes now. Even just say, these are the couple things, start that conversation today and then build it in. Well, maybe I could do part of this now. What's the baby step to protecting my asset? What's the baby step to cleaning up my documents? What's the baby step of this, right? I'm 3 years in and I'm still cleaning up shit. Still figuring out stuff. So I mean, that's just my only advice. We're tweaking documents. But
opportunities for improvement.
I know, but that's part of the plan every year, right? Every year you're going to need to relook at your documents. Every year, look at your operation plan, correcting what you didn't know, building from what you just learned, all the things. So with that, because I do, in case anybody has questions, of course, grab another glass of wine, drink, chat. We'll throw some music on, but I do want to thank Sharece and Carmen for having a conversation. Obviously, they're trusted lawyers in my circle, and not only as a business owner, but someone who leverages their expertise. We try to make this conversational. It's a start of conversations that we just want to bring to our community to make sure that we're setting up ourselves for success. It was a high-level conversation just to get you thinking. Trust that we can dig into a lot of different things. Our intent is to probably continue the conversation. If you have not already been exposed to Sharece, she just recently started a podcast called The Legal Poor, correct? No, Poor Decisions. I'm sorry, we're the legal poor. Oh, but this is the legal poor. Poor Decisions, which I think is probably one of the catchiest things around business and startups. Do you want to highlight that really quickly?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so yes, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, all of that. And what I do, it's so Poor Decisions, it's POUUR. So there's 2 U's. And what it does is it highlights all kinds of small business owners, particularly around Cleveland, but I have done some outside of Cleveland too. And we talk about their journey to starting the business. We talk about any legal aspects that they encountered, and I talk about, issues about how they can have maybe maneuvered through them legally. And then we talk about a poor decision they made, but were able to overcome in the business. And then we toast with wine at the end to good decisions. And yeah.
Love that.
But,
hence how the conversation started. We were cheersing to good decisions.
Yeah. So if if you're on any of the podcasting at all, please listen to it. Some really interesting individuals around Cleveland. One of the ones that I interviewed, she has Yellow Cake Clothing Shop, and she was on Project Runway, and she has a clothing store in the Detroit, Ohio City area. So that's just one of the people I highlighted.
Awesome. And then obviously your practice is, you have locations where again?
In Avon Lake and Oberlin. And again, we do practice all over the state of Ohio. I'm licensed in Ohio, so anywhere. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say that a lot of people, put our own plug for ourselves, is that a lot of times people say, well, you're too expensive and we can't afford you. But we want to support you because now we feel like we're family, right? Mm-hmm. So find us on social media, share our content. When we have events, share with your network. Consider coming, consider tagging a friend that you would bring with us to make sure that we're not only keeping the knowledge within ourselves, but spreading the knowledge. And so that's how we grow as small businesses. We're talking to you as the experts today, but the truth of the matter is that we are small businesses too. And we only survive by things like this and making sure that we spread the word about ourselves, between us and among us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And thank you, Ellie, for providing this beautiful spot
Oh,
and being the best moderator ever.
It's my side hustle is moderating.
So thank you.
But yes, and their cards are there as well. So grab their cards. You ping them with emails. At least one question for free on me. No, I'm just playing. All right. Well, you guys, I know. Don't sign me up. I'm not signing. I'm not a member. Hashtag member. So no, enjoy. Help yourselves to that. We'll throw in some music. Enjoy the space. But thank you so much for being here. It means a lot as a kind of just a community to continue to grow and build together. So thank you very much. Awesome. Cool. Yeah.
Thank you, husband, for recording.
I know.